connection lives on from the Chippewa down up the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With the load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That big ship and true was upon the bitude when the gales of November gave her lay. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go, it was bigger than most, with a growing good captain well seasoned, concluding some terms with a couple of steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. And later that night when the ship's bell rang, it'd be the north wind they'd been feeling. The wind in the wild made a tattletale sound, and away broke over the railing. And every man knew, as the captain did too, it was the witch of November come stealing. The dawn came late and the breakfast had to wait when gales of November came slashing. When afternoon came, it was freezing rain, the face of a hurricane west wind. When supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, fellas, it's too rough to feed you. At 7 p.m. a main hatch we gave in. He said, fellas, it's been good to know ya. The captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the big ship and crew was in peril. And later that night when his lights went out of sight, in the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The searchers all say they'd have made Whitefish Bay, they'd put 15 more miles behind her. They might have split up, or they might have capsized, they may have broke even to the water. And all that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Civilian scenes in the rooms of their ice-water mansion. Oh, Michigan steams like a young man's dreams. The islands and bays are the sportsman. Farther below Lake Ontario takes in what Lake Erie can center. The iron boats go as the mariners all know, with the gales of November remembered. In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in a maritime sailors' cathedral. The church bell chimed till it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. The legend lives on from the Chippewa down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early.
Hello and welcome to the Record of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I'm Mickey Hansen. Today we're going to be talking about the most well-known shipwreck on the Great Lakes. When we think about the Great Lakes, we think about many things. Together they make up 20% of the Earth's world's fresh surface water. We got Michigan, we got Superior, and we got Erie, and Erie, it's not shown on the map, but there's also Ontario. For the past 3 centuries, all kinds of cargo has been shipped through the Great Lakes: lumber, coal, and of course taconite. Over these past 3 centuries, many ships have met an unfortunate fate, striking bargains with its waters. All the time they're trying to sneak in one more profit before winter, trying to sneak in one more cargo before winter shuts down the lakes. And 9 times out of 10, it ends up being the last voyage. But what makes this ship so unique is the mystery surrounding the wreck. You already heard one of the reasons why people have such a fascination with this wreck. Gordon Lightfoot saw on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's a beautiful. You might agree that it's a beautiful song. There's 2 different versions of it. That one just has me in my favorite of the 2, and it brings to light the story of this great noble vessel. It was built in 1958. Named by chairman of the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Edmund Fitzgerald, who his grandfather and his grandfather's brothers had been skippers, and he wanted to continue the tradition. Well, as the Fitzgerald was launched, it was a grand occasion as Mrs. Fitzgerald, according to tradition, smashed the champagne bottle across the bow. For those of you that are not into sailor superstition, it's tradition that before a ship is launched, you take a bottle of champagne and then smash it. But there's also a sailor superstition that if it takes more than 1 swing to break the bottle, that's bad luck. Well, in this case, it took 3. And as the ship was being launched, it was being launched at a precarious angle. At such a big angle, there was such a large wave that startled spectator who suffered a heart attack and died. But over its brief 17-year career, it kept beating its own records. In 1 year, it beat its own record 6 times, and in 1 season became the first ship to haul 1 million tons of taconite through the Soo Locks. Over her career, she suffered a collision with another ship and collided with the Soo Locks no less than 3 or 4 occasions. But none so serious to put her on a commission for any noteworthy period of time. In all, the ship had 4 commanders during its brief career. Its last one was a man by the name of Ernest McSorley. He began his career in the early 1930s, and at age 19 became the youngest master on the lakes. And then in 1971 was awarded the captain's position aboard the Edmund Fitzgerald. It was a privilege to work on the Edmund Fitzgerald. It was the flagship of the Columbia Fleet and was under a long-term charter on Hogan B. Norton, scheduled to expire in 1983. Well, Captain McSorley was looking forward to retiring after this one voyage, since his wife Nellie was in the nursing home suffering with arthritis. And he had told his wife, it won't be long, but it happened to be their last meeting. Other crewmen had planned to retire. Like one man, Bob Rafferty, was not even planning on being in that ship because he was hoping the ship's regular cook would come back because the doctor had given him orders not to go because of ulcers. But the last minute, his ulcers started to act up, so Rafferty ended up having to take over for this voyage. Bob, as his crewman called him, had this premonition that something was going to happen. He was usually happy-go-lucky, always an optimist, but about a couple, 3 days before his before the ill-fated voyage, he had the strange premonition that he was going to die on the ship, and he kept telling everybody, "Get off the ship as soon as you can. Don't stay so longer than you have to." A lot of people thought he was silly, but his foreboding turned out to be true, as we shall soon see. The Edmund Fitzgerald set sail November 9th, 1975, from an area called Duluth Superior, over by Wisconsin, where it picked up a load of 26,119 tons of taconite pellets and 50,000 gallons of fuel from the Burlington Lock Number 1. The way a ship is loaded up, if you look at the middle of the ship, there's these things called hatch covers. This large crane is lifted up, and then there's a series of chutes that dump the cargo in. And by tradition, the ship's first mate supervises the loading of the vessel. At the fore end of the ship, he sees three lights: red for tilt to port, green for Alyssa starboard, and white means it's level, and he has to keep an eye on these lights while the ship is being loaded. And once that's being done, then the hatch covers are put on the top of the ship, and then the men have to take these clamps and put them on and take this wrench and crank them up, get them really good and tight. Because the way these hatch covers are, so much as a thin gap could sink the ship. But what's so bad about these clamps is if you put them on wrong, they snap on real easily. But if you put them on just right, you had to put on a little muscle to give them as tight as needed. Well, once it got its cargo, it set sail for Zug Island over by Detroit. And then it started to proceed up Lake Superior, and then over by Twin Harbors, Two Harbors, Minnesota. It's accompanied by another ship, the Arthur M. Anderson, captained by Bernie Cooper. Among the two captains, they agreed to take the more northern course, which was longer but a lot safer. Now there were, the lake was nice and flat when they first set sail, but there was some talk about a storm. But storms are hardly anything new on the Great Lakes, so they really didn't give it much thought. So as Captain McSorley is keeping in touch with Bernie Cooper, they go ahead and make the long voyage until they get past the Isle Royale, and then they decide to turn south, going past Michipicoten Island. Around this area, there's an area called the 6 Fathom Shoal area. A fathom is 36 feet, so it's 36 feet of churning water. As Captain Cooper later reported, McSorley had a ship closer than he wanted his own ship to be. And to give you an idea, the gap between the bottom of the ship and the bottom of the lake is about 9 feet. Sounds like a lot of clearance when it's nice and flat. But when you got a storm, the ships go scraping against the shoals. So that was another theory that the Coast Guard proposed, that it hit a shoal. Well, about an hour after going past Michipicoten Island, Captain Bernie Coomber gets a call saying that Captain McSorley had lost both of his radars, lost a couple of vents, and had developed a starboard list, and asked Captain Cooper to keep an eye on him. And Captain Cooper said he would. As we get further in the voyage, Captain Cooper reports that he says the storm is the worst he'd ever seen. Like I said earlier, it was nice and flat when the voyage first started, but by the next day, the lake was a inland hurricane, 90-per-hour winds and 30-foot waves. And here they were. They wanted to talk. That's been taught, but the captain thought about beaching it, but decided that their really only hope was to make it for the Whitefish Bay area. Well, just 17 miles away from Whitefish Point, Captain Cooper gets asked for one more radar fix, and the Captain Cooper says, "You're going to be going past another ship," and First Mate Morgan Clark was on watch at the time, and Clark told him that the ship would be passing the west of him. And then he asked Captain McSorley, "Oh, by the way, how are you making out with your problem?" And McSorley replied, "We are holding our own. It's going like an old shoe, no problems at all." Those were the last words from the Edmund Fitzgerald. 20 minutes later, Cooper tried to pick up the Fitzgerald. Nothing. Again, try to adjust his radio, try to adjust his radar, trying to pick it up. He still got nowhere. He contacted nearby ships to see if his radar was working and if anyone else could pick him up on his radar. He was hoping maybe the ship simply suffered a blackout. And the other ships, no, we can't pick him up on radar. So Captain Cooper makes a call to the Coast Guard. They're not really concerned. They think the Edmund Fitzgerald simply had made it to port and was just winning out the storm. About a half hour later, Captain Cooper says, "He was right in front of us, just like before. And I could see no license before. I just hope he didn't take a nosedive." Well, after the second call, the Coast Guard went ahead and sent out helicopters. The Coast Guard would rush and other vessels to try to look for the ship. And the Coast Guard had asked Captain Cooper to turn around and look for the ship himself. And Captain Cooper says, "There's a ship on the bottom, and I think there might be two if I go back." So he turned around, and then there were 7 other ships that were safely anchored in Whitefish Point. Only the William Clay Ford agrees to join the Anderson, along with another ship, the Hilda Merijan. But after he proceeded maybe about a few miles, the captain of the Hilda Merijan determined the storm was too bad, so he turned back. So here's the Ford and the Anderson crisscrossing the Whitefish Point area, hoping beyond hope to find the Fitzgerald. And finally, the truth had been revealed. An oil slick came from the water. Both lifeboats had been recovered from the ship. One looking like a giant hand had crushed it, and another one like some big mouth had taken a big bite out of it. Both life rafts were recovered, as were most of the life jackets, but there were no bodies, and there were no survivors. Over the year, the Coast Guard makes its reporting about what caused the disaster, and although they were not able to say with exact certainty what caused the sinking, the theory that they support was that in fact, infective hatch covers was what caused the ship to go down. The Lake Carriers Association had their own theory that it struck a shoal and went down. And those aren't the only two theories. Other theories that have come up is there's one that's known as the Six Phantom Shoal, not Six Phantom Shoal, but the Three Sisters theory, in which two waves came on one side, one wave came on the other side and literally pushed the ship down. But if you ever read Frederick Stonehouse's book, he makes quick work of that theory. And also one theory that I'm right now telling you support is the idea that it's simply broken two as it went down. I mean, this has happened before with the Carly Brandley and with the Daniel J. Morrell. When you got water on either end, you got nothing in the middle, down it's going to go. The one thing that always struck me as strange is if you look at the bow section of the wreck, the ship has a port list, and yet the Captain McSorley reported a starboard list. So I'm theorizing the ship had to do one somersault. So when it hit bottom, so when it was going up and down on the lakes, the wave hit the bridge just right, it twisted, and then down it went, ship did one somersault, and then down it goes. Right now, the estimate says it took 5 minutes. No distress call, no sign of the ship, no one ever escaped. So whatever theory is proposed, you can pretty much agree whatever happened, it hit and it hit fast. So there's just no way that crew could have stood a chance. Over the years, on the anniversary of the vessel, on November 10th, theories of all kinds pop up, none of which can either be proven or disproven, since there were no bodies and there are no survivors. Well, anyway, a year after the wreck had been found, the Coast Guard took numerous photographs of the wreck. And that drawing you saw a little earlier, that's from the Coast Guard report, showing it took all the pictures and then came up with this rather crude mosaic of what the ship looks like today. The big problem with the wreck is it's covered in mud. So the parts they wanted to see, they couldn't get a good look at because the hatch covers were covered in mud. And the stern section is completely upside down. So they could see the bottom of it pretty clearly, but the top of it they couldn't get a good look at. So right now we're left up to speculation as to what caused the disaster. And the problem was, they really didn't get a heck of a lot of pictures. It was more or less the chest of the ROV than it was to actually do a thorough exam. But what they did have to look at, they had all kinds of clues to work with, but all they were left with possibilities. It could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been this, it could have been that, but nothing absolutely positively conclusive. And then in 1990, I think it's 1993, the most controversial expedition to the wreck. If you got sensitive subjects, I suggest you change the channel for this part of the show. When they went down to the bottom of the wreck, a guy by the name of Shannon Faulkner, I think his name is, found a body towards the bow section of the wreck. All he could tell me was the man was wearing coveralls and was toward the bow of the ship. The families were so outraged by this one man that there was a big push to have the wreck declared off limits. And to put this thing permanently behind them, they figure we'll never be able to solve this. Let's just close it and forget about it. Well, in June of '95, the Great Lakes Historical Society commissioned one last expedition in coordination with the National Geographic Society and the Canadian Navy, where they would recover the ship's bell and replace it with a brand new bell, which would list the names of all the crewmen of the Fitzgerald. For those of you who have cable, I strongly recommend a show they have on the Discovery Channel where they document this particular expedition. They actually showed a thing called the newt suit. It gives a person the ability to go hundreds of feet. All it is a mini submersible. A person could go down. A person went down in the suit and took a blowtorch and cut. First, it was a tripod. The first two parts of it had already been wrenched away, and the guy in the nude suit had wanted to loose the third part, and then the bell slowly but surely rose to the surface, and then the new bell came down, and then he welded that into place. And this is the bell that's now on the Fitzgerald wreck. And then the bow was deposited in the ship, and it was there was a quick memorial service to honor the men who had died on the ship. And then after they arrived in Whitefish Point, the ship's bell was rang 30 more times, 29 for each crewman that had been lost on the Edmund Fitzgerald. And then a 30th ring, which was done by Gordon Lightfoot to remember all the men that have been lost on the Great Lakes. And right now, there's, as I said earlier, there's a really, really big push to have the wreck declared off limits. And if any of the family members are listening, I want to say I would love to honor your wishes, but I don't want your family members to die for nothing. I want their deaths to mean something. If we never find out what happened to that ship, inevitably other crewmen are going to suffer that fate, and I'm certain you don't want that. That's why I think it's very important we got technology at our disposal that we didn't have 20 years ago. We can actually see right through that mud. We might even actually be able to recover the ship's, if it's in fairly good condition, we could cover the ship's log and find out what happened then. Now, as far as recommended viewing is concerned, I recommend watching a show on the Discovery Channel called The Mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I'd also like to recommend 3 books. First one is The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Frederick Stonehouse. It has the Coast Guard report in it. It has all different pictures of the wreck, of the ship itself. And Fred really gets into great detail as far as what went on with the Coast Guard, how they were inadequately prepared for the disaster, how it took a good hour to get a Coast Guard chopper out there to. He even mentions once that even if there were survivors on one of the lifeboats, inevitably they would have drowned by the time the Coast Guard got there. That's one book I'd recommend you read. The second one I'd recommend is William Rannigan's Great Lakes Shipwrecks and Survivals. When the book was first written, the Edmund Fitzgerald wreck hadn't occurred yet. But there was an updated version just a few years ago in which, towards the end, he mentions the Edmund Fitzgerald. I think that chapter is a good 20 or 30 pages long, and I think it'd be excellent reading. The final book I like to recommend is Gales of November. This book actually makes you feel like you're right there during the ship's last hours. You're going to feel like you're actually there. You're seeing the crewmen in their last moments, knowing that they're going to die and they're helpless to do anything about it. The captain making the call about steering the ship, and the in vain effort by the the Anderson and the Ford to try to find the wreck. And there's two videos I'd like to recommend. For those of you who have access to the internet, the site is www.edmundfitzgerald.com. It's for an organization called Softport Video, except for one video on the Andrea Doria. All their videos are dedicated to ships that have been lost on the Great Lakes, and they actually did two on the Edmund Fitzgerald. The Mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald was the first one. The second one, I think, was the Edmund Fitzgerald Past and Present. The Past and Present one was the one where they talk about the raising of the bell. And also in Detroit, about 10 months before the sinking, an anchor was lost by the Fitzgerald. And just a few years ago, the anchor was recovered, and it's now on permanent display at that Maritime Cathedral you hear mentioned in Gordon Lightfoot's song. And speaking of Gordon Lightfoot, if you ever want to listen to his songs, you got two choices. There's Gord's Gold 2, and there's also Summertime Dream. Summertime Dream, by the way, came out just a year after the disaster, and it hit number one, hit top of the charts for I think about 4 or 5 weeks straight. Gord's Gold Go came out just a few years ago. I've had a chance to listen to, I like both of them, but Gold Score 2 version really brings out the haunting quality in the song. That's why I chose it for the opening credits. I was planning to make this an hour show, but I guess I'm going to have to settle for a half hour. I hope you enjoy this show, and I hope you'll read about not only the Edmund Fitzgerald and other ships that have been lost on the Great Lakes. I thank you for your time, and let's pray for the Fitzgerald's lost souls.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed.